So, David, in this edition of the Messenger magazine, your editorial, it follows on from last week where you're talking about the cruise ship and the lifeboat, and you mentioned towards the end that Jesus Christ came to seek and to save that which was lost. And in this particular edition, you talk about Zacchaeus. Now, there's so many different characters that could be used. So why Zacchaeus? What was special about him?
Zacchaeus just intrigues me. Why does Luke include this in his gospel? Zacchaeus has power, yet he's feeling incredibly inferior. He's described as a small person. And I imagine that smallness, some physical smallness, sometimes helped him to want to punch above his weight and size, and sometimes made him a little bit tenacious.
Well, we knew he may be small in stature, but he was large in status in terms of where he was in the community. And as a tax collector, well, maybe not so much of a large status, but he had a role to play, a significant role to play.
So taxes in those days, of course, were legislated against, but local taxes seem to be pay on demand. What you've got, I want. And it was corrupt, it was inefficient, so Zacchaeus could somehow extortion people to pay what he felt they should give them. And of course, you imagine what his reputation was as a result.
Sure.
They did not like him. He was a pain in the neck, and I imagine he used threatening terms at times.
So, in the context of this particular story, we know Jesus invited him to come to for Jesus to come to his home. So who, in your mind, was Zacchaeus represent today? Who does he represent, as he was marginally accepted? He was an outcast. He was not revered amongst his own. He was used by the Roman authorities. So he was all over the place. So
why did Jesus invite him home? That's what I want to know. Why?
But the question is,
Yeah, go on.
Who does he represent? And then, so who does he represent today?
Anybody who is a victim and a perpetrator. Because I don't want to forget that.
So that then leads on to the question that you just asked. So, victim and a perpetrator.
So why did Jesus favour this perpetrator? Because we see in other places in the Gospels where Jesus usually came down on the side or put his arm around people who were in distress, who were victimised, who were prejudiced against. But this time, he basically, you could argue, he sat with robbers and thieves. Because, to use an expression, Zacchaeus was a dirty, rotten scoundrel. He exploited people. You couldn't trust him. He told lies. He wanted to. It was all about me. And so this little person goes along with the crowd. He's in the crowd. He's a loner. He doesn't have many friends. But something stirs in him, wanting to know about this person called Jesus. Climbs up into this tree to see Jesus. And why didn't Jesus just go straight past? I don't need to deal with this person.
So there was more to Zacchaeus than just a victim, perpetrator. Yes. There was so many other facets to who he was and who he represents today. Because, as you just said, he was seeking himself, and Christ has obviously come to seek and to save. So they both actually met at a tangent, because one was seeking and one for something, and one was searching for someone.
Yes. And Jesus found Zach. He went looking for him and even said, let's go eat together. Let's have tea. And of course, that's Jesus outside the box again, mixing with someone who you wouldn't automatically expect him to mix with, taking a risk about his own reputation. And I would love to have been in that house.
But then it also showed that Jesus saw something within Zacchaeus as well, something deeper.
He looks not at his past, but at what Zacchaeus can be.
Right.
And Zacchaeus was a changed person as a result of that conversation in that home over tea. I imagine them having a cup of grape juice and some pita bread and some olives. And as they ate together, Jesus must have said to Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus, are you happy? Are you really, really happy? And I reckon Zacchaeus must have said, almost broke down, no, I'm the most miserable person on planet Earth. I may have the money, but nobody loves me. And Jesus, all I want to be is loved. And Jesus must have said to Zacchaeus, let me show you a different way. And he did. And you know the outcome. And Zacchaeus was a changed man.
Sure. No longer a pain.
No, not a pain, that's right.
But at the same time, it also shows that Zacchaeus represents hope as well, because people who may identify with those qualities you mentioned, I'm lonely, I'm unlovable, I'm in my own world, nobody cares for me. But Christ really met him at his deepest and lowest need and changed that all around and gave him a future, gave him a perspective of where his life could be in Christ.
There are people in our lives who are a pain in the neck. I need to always see them as someone for whom God has the highest favour. And that changes my attitude towards them. Through prayer, through understanding, through seeing them as Jesus sees them. Is that not the calling of the Christian, of the Christ follower? And you said earlier, and I do want to answer your question, I'm not trying to avoid your question, who does Zacchaeus represent? It can represent anybody who feels they're not part of the circle. And in our churches, in our community of faith, no one is ever outside the circle of God's love. What does that mean? That means that it's my duty to make sure they're kept inside the circle of God's love, because we love them for whoever they are and whatever they're like. Isn't that the gospel?
Absolutely.